Can I ask you about something that I truly enjoy and I think is really powerful, but most people don't seem to believe in that, but is drilling. I don't know. Maybe people are different, but I love the idea, maybe even outside of jiu-jitsu, of doing the same thing over and over. It's like Jiro dreams of sushi. I love doing the thing that nobody wants to do and doing it 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more than what nobody wants to do. So I'm a huge fan of drilling. Obviously, I'm not a professional athlete, but I feel like if I actually gave myself, if I wanted to be really good at jiu-jitsu, like reach the level of being in the top 25 when I was much younger, like really strive, I think I could achieve it by drilling. I had this belief untested. Can you challenge this idea or agree
Okay,
with it?
first off, fascinating. However, we're going to have to,
Disagree?
no, no.
Okay.
We're just going to have to start to understand what are we talking about when we talk about drilling. It's a very vague term. Okay, if you're at this moment, many of your listeners are probably having the same thought process, which is that, oh, drilling. Yeah, I know what that is. We go into the gym and we pick a move and we practice it for a certain number of repetitions. And if I do that, I'm going to get better at the technique. Okay. They're wrong. We've got to have a much more in-depth understanding of what the hell we're talking about when we talk about drilling. Ultimately, any movement in the gym that doesn't improve the skills you already have or build new skills is a waste of time, a waste of resources. Everything you do should be done with the aim and the understanding that this is going to make me better at the sport I practice. If it's not, it shouldn't be there. The majority of what passes for drilling in most training halls will not make you better, including some of the most cherished forms of drilling, which is repetition for numbers. The moment you say to someone, I want you to do this 100 times, what are they really thinking about? Volume. They're saying, okay, I'm at repetition 78.
Yeah.
I'm at 80, 20 more to go. All their primary thought process is on numbers. That's not the point of drilling. The point is skill acquisition. When people drill, don't get them focused on numbers, get them focused on mechanics. That's what they have to worry about. I never have my students drill for numbers, ever. Just 1, 2, 3, get the fuck out of here. Are you kidding me? Like, how are you going to get better with that? Okay, get them working on the sense of gaining knowledge. That's my job. I have to give them knowledge. I have to explain to them what they're trying to do. That starts them on the right track. But knowledge is one thing. Skill is another. If jiu-jitsu was just about knowledge, then all the 60 and 70-year-old red belts would be the world champions. They're not. Jiu-jitsu isn't won by knowledge, it's won by skill. Knowledge is the first step in building skill. So my job as a coach is to transmit knowledge. Then I have to create training programs where the path from knowledge to polished skill is carried out. That's the interface between me and my students. And so I give them drills where the whole emphasis is upon getting a sense where they understand what are the problems they're trying to solve and working towards practical solutions. They never work with numbers. They work with mechanics and feel. Then you have to bring in the idea of progression. When you drill, there's zero resistance. When you fight in competition, there's 100% resistance. You can't go from 0 to 100. There has to be progress over time where I have them work in drills with slightly increasing increments of resistance. And just as we talked about earlier with the weightlifter, who doesn't start with 500 pounds, but who begins with the bar, and then over time builds the skills that one day out there in the future, he will lift 500 pounds. So too, that judo-gatame that you're working on today is feeble and pathetic. But 5 years from now, you'll win a world championship with it. You can't have this naive idea of drilling as something you just come out, you randomly pick a move, and you work for numbers until you're satisfied a certain set of numbers that your coach threw at you, and then you think you're going to get better. There's even dangers with drilling. There is no performance increase that comes once you get to a certain level and you just keep doing the same damn thing. Let's say, for example, you come out and you hit 100 repetitions of the armbar judo-gatame from guard position, and you're all proud of yourself because you hit 100 repetitions and your body's tired and you're telling yourself, man, I got a good workout. And you come in tomorrow, you do exactly the same thing. You come in the day after that, and a week goes by and you've done the same thing. Then a year later, you do the same thing. Ask yourself, has your judo-gatame really gotten better? No, you've performed literally thousands and thousands of repetitions. You've spent an enormous amount of training time and energy that could have gone in different directions on something which didn't make you any better. Drills have diminishing returns. Once you get to a certain skill level, if you just keep hammering on the same thing in the same fashion for the same amount of time, you stop getting better.
Can I, partially for fun, partially for devil's advocate, but partially because I actually believe this, to push back on some points, is it possible? So everything you said, I think, is beautiful and correct. But the asking yourself the question, am I getting better, is a really important one. And you could do that in training. Is there a set of techniques, maybe a small subset of all the techniques that are in jiu-jitsu, where you can have significant skill acquisition if you put in the numbers or the time, whatever, on a technique against an opponent who's not resisting? Let me elaborate. What I've, maybe I'm different.
You'll probably have to furnish an example.
Yes. Let me first make a general statement, and then I can give examples. The general statement is, I found that through repetitions, and this is high repetitions, combined with training, but high repetitions against a non-resisting opponent, I've gotten to understand the way my body moves, the way I apply pressure on a human, because it's not actually zero resistance. The opponent's still laying there. They're still keeping their legs up. They're still doing, they might not be resisting, but they're still creating a structure.
Yes.
A non-dynamic
They're
structure.
presenting a target.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not dynamic, so you can't master the timing of things, but you can master but I felt like I could gain an understanding of how to apply pressure to the human body over thousands of repetitions.
Now,
So for example, I just to give you an example to know what we're talking about. There's a guy named Salo Ribeiro and Shanji Ribeiro that have this, I guess, I already forgot, but the headquarters position or something like that. But putting pressure as you pass guard, like medium passing distance kind of pressure. I've did thousands of repetitions of that to understand what putting pressure with my hips feels like, to truly understand that movement. I felt like I was getting much better. It's like, it's hard to put into words, but that skill acquisition is so subtle. Just the way you turn your little hips.
but you're already talking about a better form of drilling now. You're going beyond the basic numbers, and you're getting the sense of feel and mechanics, which is what we want in drilling.
But the reason I say numbers, and maybe you can speak to this, but this might be an OCD thing, but it allows you to take a journey that doesn't just last a week or 2 weeks, but a journey where you stay with the technique for 2-3 years. And there's a dedication to it, where it's a long-term commitment to where you're forcing yourself, perhaps there's other mechanisms, but you're forcing yourself to stay with a technique longer than most people around you are staying with whatever they're working on. And you're taking that long journey. And the numbers somehow enforce that persistence and that dedication.
First thing, that journey's a wonderful thing. And if that technique is a crucial part of what you do,
Yes.
then it's time well invested. But always understand that it comes at an opportunity cost, that by spending that amount of time on that one technique, you've sacrificed other things that you could have learned that could have won you matches. So understand that every focus upon one element of the game comes at the opportunity cost of other elements. Yeah. Now, as long as you're playing a part of the game where, okay, this is central to what I do.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. But just be aware of the danger of opportunity cost. That's something no one talks about in the training room, but it becomes very important. Secondly, the other question you have to start asking yourself is, okay, that training clearly had benefits for you early on. But when the point of diminishing returns starts coming in, if you feel you're just doing the same thing, then it's time to switch. Now, if you feel you're still getting benefit from it, by all means, continue. That will be a call on your part. You've been playing this game a long time now, so I would trust your call on that. But my job as a coach is to look out and say, okay, this kid's been working cross ashigarami for 6 months, and I feel he's gotten to a good skill level. If he stays any further on it, the opportunity cost becomes greater than the expected benefits of continuing it. And that's my job as a coach, is to direct things in that fashion. If I can do a good job with that, then I can take them to the next level of drilling and start amping it up. And that's how I keep progress over time. My biggest fear is to have students run past the point of diminishing returns, staying stagnant, where opportunity cost comes in and they're not making the progress they could in the time that they've been working.
I mean, it was almost a philosophical question for me. That's what I was always on a search on, because I know my mind is likes drilling. I don't like relying on other people for improvement. And drilling allows me to do something that is 100% me.
It's interesting, Lex. You say you don't like relying on other people in drilling, but in drilling, you really do rely a lot on your partner. One of the first things I do when I coach people is I teach them how to drill. That's a skill in itself. And drilling is, in a sense, the opposite of sparring. Drilling is a cooperative venture where you work as dance partners, complementing each other's movement. If I drill with Gordon Ryan and I want him to work arm bars, I will move my body in ways which make it an interesting exercise for Gordon. I'm not just sitting there and he does a repetition and okay, he does 10. I can't wait for this to be over so I can do my 10, and I can't wait for all this to be over so we can just spar and get over with all this bullshit. That's the sad truth of most drilling and jiu-jitsu. There's a sense in which when good people drill, it's like watching good people dance. They move in unison and complement each other's movement and make each other look better. Sparring, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of that. That's resistance, where you're trying to make the other person look as bad as possible. And once you understand the different directions in which drilling and sparring go, that's when things start getting interesting. You start getting fast progress.
Yeah, just you're absolutely right. I think I was not very eloquent describing what I mean. I found myself not able to find in jiu-jitsu too many people that are willing to dedicate a huge amount of time to a particular technique.
I concur with you on that, Lex. Now, answer the interesting question. Why? Why can't you get people to drill with you?
By the way, if I could just shout out, the people that did drill with me is usually blue belt women, because they're smaller. They don't like training because they get their ass kicked because they're much smaller. So they're willing to invest a significant amount of effort into training.
That's good, but their motivation for doing so is not good.
Well, yes, but exactly.
When your motivation for drilling is because you don't want to get your ass kicked, that's
no
not a good motivation.
black belt ever I could never find a black belt that I could drill with like this.
Now let's go back to that question.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't. I mean, this. I am somebody who likes to say nice things about people. So
Let me answer for you.
Yeah.
2 reasons: because they find it boring,
Yes.
and secondly, perhaps more importantly, they don't believe it works.
Yeah. Those are good answers.
And now let's go further and ask the truly interesting question: why do they believe that?
If I were to answer it in the context of Russian wrestling, where drilling is much bigger part, is I think culturally that was knowledge that everybody tells each other in jiu-jitsu that drilling doesn't work.
Because they're never taught how to drill. No one ever sits you down one day and says, okay, this is how you drill. And so the exercise feels futile. They don't feel their skill level is going up. They don't associate drilling with increased skill level. They associate sparring with increased skill level, but not drilling, which is a tragedy because it is a fantastic way to introduce and expand the repertoire of a developing student. It's an essential part of every workout I teach. I always say the game of jiu-jitsu begins with knowledge and builds up to skill. Who wins is the one who has greater skill, and 9 times out of 10. So to me, it's a tragedy that what you're saying breaks my heart to hear that you couldn't get a black belt to drill with you. That's shameful. And but I understand. I sympathize with those black belts too, because the way in which most people are told to drill does feel ineffective, and it is damn boring. They'd rather just spar. They feel like they get more out of the workout, and it's, if anything, an indictment upon most of the training programs around the nation.
Would you say that drilling, if you were to build a black belt world champion, would drilling be what % of their training would in the entirety of their career would be drilling?
Great question. Let's first put a proviso on it that I don't do the same thing for all athletes. Everyone's got a different personality. And like Nicky Rod, I can only hold his attention for 2 minutes at a time. And Gary Tonin, 5 minutes. Gordon Ryan, 5 hours. Like George St. Pierre, 5 hours. Travis Stevens, 5 hours. They are just laser focused. So everyone's different. Let's put that down as our first proviso. You probably knew those answers already.
Yeah. Sure. That's hilarious.
But as a general rule, if I run a 2.5 hour class, you can expect 1.5 hours of it to be, I'm going to use the word drilling, but I'm also going to say that this is too complex of a story to give now with words. I would need to demonstrate it. But the way in which we drill is not your standard method of drilling. And then it's into sparring. But if you give me a choice between a bad drilling partner and sparring, I'd make the same choice that most black belts make, which I would go with sparring.
Because you can create drilling within the sparring environment.
Like good drilling is a wonderful thing. Bad drilling is just a worthless waste of time.